Hello, everyone. I am Chelsea Barrick, and this week we are going to be going over evaluating macro practice. According to the book, evaluation is a process of determining whether a given change effort was worthwhile. Evaluations look at many different aspects of a program, including money, time, actual efforts such as the hours being expended, and the output discussing the number of clients being served. One of the earliest examples came from the early 1900s when they were measuring whether literacy rates were improving and employment skills acquired. There are two perspectives of macro level evaluation: program evaluation and program development. I wanted to start off by going over the purposes of program evaluation. So the purpose of program evaluations is to help us save time and money and avoid wasting resources on approaches that either do not work or do not work well. It helps us to be able to spend resources on unmet needs, such as the evaluation will discover gaps among those being served. It allows for a change in programs to make them more effective, identifying areas of strengths and weaknesses. It helps identify whether a program is adequately serving the target population or not. It helps in ensuring that programs are providing the services as they were intended to. Helps building support for effective programs and distinguishing which services produce the more favorable outcomes. Continuing on with that list, we have identifying the side effects that were neither intended nor planned, benefiting overall society's well-being in general, assisting in determining whether a program resources and staff are adequate, helps identify that staff services are being utilized appropriately, and lastly, being able to gain personal satisfaction from knowing that programs work and work well. Throughout the chapter, there were many key concepts that were presented about evaluations. So going over control groups, a control group is the group that is not receiving the intervention and is being used only for comparison purposes. An experimental group is the group that is receiving the intervention. The dependent variable is what you are wanting to understand, measure, and predict. And this is what we are trying to measure or achieve through this intervention. The independent variable is what explains the changes in the dependent variable. Sampling is the group of people that are involved in the evaluation that reflect the target population. An example of sampling is random sampling, which is when every member of a population has an equal chance of being selected. The experimental design aims to test whether the intervention causes a change within the target group. The quasi-experimental design tries to identify a cause and effect relationship between the independent variable and the dependent variable. Baseline identifies the original amount of frequency that an event occurs before the intervention is provided. There are two types of baselines. The retrospective baseline is composed of data that is collected after the fact, and a concurrent baseline is where data is gathered simultaneously to the intervention being provided. Standard deviation is a measure of the amount of variability of observations around the mean. Reliability is the likelihood that measurement will yield the same result at different times being tested. Validity is whether the instrument measures what it is supposed to measure. Descriptive statistics are the statistics that describe the phenomena. Inferential statistics are used to make an inference about the population based on a sample of that population. Outcome is the quality of life change that results from the intervention applied. Functional outcomes focus on changes in the changes of quality life in the client. And process of care outcomes are outcomes that relate directly to how the intervention was provided. Statistical significance is used to describe the probability that a certain result came by chance. The chi-squared test is a statistical procedure that compares the expected frequencies to the observed frequencies. And a correlation test is used to determine the relationship between two variables. The next part of the chapter goes over the problems and barriers in evaluation. The first barrier listed is failure to plan for evaluation. This occurs when the decision to evaluate the program comes after it has already been operating. When this happens, no baseline data has been taken beforehand, and it is more difficult to design an evaluation without that data. The next topic discussed is a lack of program stability. Programs are always changing, whether it's the practitioner changing the way that they are providing this intervention, more or less money being available to that program, and clients coming in and out of the group. The next barrier comes from the relationship with the evaluator and the practitioner. Practitioners are concerned with the delivery of services, while evaluators are more worried about the effectiveness of that service and looking into the data that comes with that. And these roles can conflict with each other at times. Next, the evaluation results may be unclear. This happens when it cannot be fully determined if the service made a change or if outside causes contributed to the change. Another factor is when evaluation results are not accepted. This can happen when a program has been proven to be successful, but it was not continued due to not being politically popular, or when those receiving those results did not like the finding. The last problem or barrier when evaluation is when evaluation is not worth the effort. This can occur when the measures of the evaluation are not useful to the stakeholders, or if there are problems in the validity or reliability. Cost of the evaluation can also be a factor that determines if the evaluation would be worth it. The first article that I found was Program Staff Perceptions of Barriers to Evaluations by Sandy Tott and Marvin Alkin from 2003. What this study did was investigated barriers to the implementation of external program evaluations. For this study, they interviewed 18 staff to establish their thoughts on the barriers to evaluation and their views on the value of evaluation and relevant barriers. Most of the staff identified that human factors were more of a barrier to evaluation than others. It also identified that it is important to create a trusting relationship with those who are part of the evaluation and maintain participation and communication with them throughout the evaluation. The next section we are moving into are the models of evaluation. So the book lists 3 models of evaluation: formative or monitoring evaluations, summative or impact evaluations, and effectiveness and efficiency evaluations. Formative evaluations focus more on the process rather than focusing on the outcome of an intervention. They focus on describing what the program does and what is happening during the intervention delivery. Monitoring can be used to determine if the program is serving the intended population. Data collected in formative evaluations include the client demographics, the reason they needed help, the service provided, and the outcomes achieved. Summative or impact evaluations measure the results of the services provided. usually used following an intervention and change occurring in the target population. Effectiveness and efficiency evaluations are distinguished by if they measure effectiveness or efficiency. Effectiveness evaluations measure if the intervention produced a desirable result, and efficiency evaluations measure whether a program achieves outcomes in a less expensive manner. Evaluation approaches. The first approach that we are going to be going over is quantitative methods. Quantitative methods use objective data to measure whether a change occurred after the intervention. Some examples of this would be scores on a test, arrest numbers, or frequency of temper tantrums. These studies use baselines and compare changes over time in chosen target behaviors. Qualitative methods are designed to reveal the experiences of the group. This can involve an in-depth review of a small number of cases and describing or exploring the experiences of those involved. Qualitative methods can include interviews, reviews of logs or journals, and similar approaches. One group post-test designs focus only on a single target population and the changes that occurred following the intervention. Pre-test and post-test designs can show changes over time by comparing a situation after the intervention with the situation before the intervention. Client satisfaction surveys measure the general satisfaction with a service or achievement of a goal. Goal attainment scaling is used to monitor the data progress of clients and continue to obtain data on a weekly, monthly, or yearly basis. This is done with a goal that is set by the worker and client and helps monitor progress throughout the study. Target problem scaling is used to monitor a client's behavior. It identifies one problem, applies an intervention, and measures if the problem has been reduced, modified, or eliminated repeatedly. Case studies allow the use of one case or a small group of cases and allows us to study a problem and identify what led to an outcome. Group comparison studies is comparing the outcome between two or more groups, one being a treatment group and the other being a control group. Quality assurance reviews determine compliance with an established set of standards and using the findings to correct shortcomings or deficiencies. Stages and steps in evaluation. Stage 1 is conceptualization and goal setting. In this stage, the goal that is to be achieved is decided and determining how it will be known that it has been achieved, making sure that the goal is measurable. Stage 2 is when you refine the measures that you will use to identify whether the goal has been achieved. Stage 3 is sampling. This is a stage in which you decide the sample, whether or not you want to collect from all participants or to sample from the target population. Stage 4 is design. This is when you select an appropriate design to measure the goal and eliminate other possible explanations for the observed outcomes. Stage 5 is gathering data. Data may include direct observation, written surveys, interviews, and reviews of existing sources. Some data can focus on program participants or more global types of information. Stage 6 is data analysis. This is the process of assessing the nature and significance of the results that were obtained through the data gathering stage. Stage 7 is data presentation. This is a step in which you are presenting the data that has been collected. Communicating evaluation data. It is important to communicate the evaluation results to the intended audience. The final evaluation report will contain 6 sections. Part 1, Introduction. This reviews the situation that prompted the evaluation and where you describe your research question. Part 2, the literature review. This is where you provide a thorough review of existing research pertaining to your research question. Part 3, methodology. It describes the evaluation design and data collection methods that were used. Part 4, results. Here is where you will describe your findings with visual representations of the data such as charts and graphs, and reports on the importance of these findings. Part 5 is discussion. Briefly summarize your findings, describe any unexpected results, and explain practice implications, and describe any limitations within the research. Part 6 is references and appendices. This is where you'll list any of your books, articles, etc. that you used in preparing and conducting your findings. Upholding ethics and values. Our priority of research as social workers is to protect our clients. We do this by ensuring that the participants know exactly what is going to go on during the evaluation and informing them of any possible negative side effects of the intervention. We also do this by ensuring that no harm is to come to our clients. Another way of protecting our clients is maintaining confidentiality, privacy, and the rights of the clients. The NASW Code of Ethics states that it is a social worker's obligation to stay current with relevant research and ensure that clients receive the most effective assistance. In looking for articles for this presentation, I came across this quote from Ferguson and Teixeira. To create and foster a culture of social justice within clinical practice organizations, schools of social work should offer courses on intervention development, implementation, and evaluation across methods so that students are better trained to bridge micro and macro methods in their practice. The final article that I will be discussing in this presentation is Evidence-Based Practice, Addressing Challenges and Opportunities by Bruce Thayer. Within this article, 5 steps are presented in evaluating evidence-based practice on a macro level. This article poses the question in evaluating whether EBP can be used in a macro setting by social workers. He presented the following steps for evidence-based practice in the macro setting. 1, posing answerable questions. 2, locating credible research studies. 3, critically evaluating this research and its applicability to practice situations. 4, selecting interventions by integrating research evidence with professional expertise. And 5, evaluating outcomes. The discussion questions that I have for you guys this week are: have you ever been a part of an evaluation within the agency of your practicum or workplace? And if you were to be designing an evaluation, would you rather be an in-house evaluator or an external evaluator, and why? Here are the references that I used for this presentation. Thank you guys for listening and watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful week.